Well, it's a lovely touch. In each chapter, you're outlining some of the headlines. 1976, for example, the headlines: Great Bookie Robbery, Jimmy Carter, US President. And the hits as well: Fernando by ABBA, Dancing Queen by ABBA, Let's Stick Together, Brian Ferry. So it gives you a sense of the age.
Well, it does, and that was the intention. But quite a few hit songs have followed me through the years, and I can remember Connie Francis, Where the Boys Are. I specifically remember playing that song on a particular Saturday morning in October in, I think it was November 1963, when the young newspaper boy came in to deliver the Warrnambool Standard, for which I would just circle various stories and read as a local news later in the breakfast show. And he walked in about 6:15 and announced that Kennedy was dead. And assuming that, in fact, if Graham Kennedy was indeed dead, it would take more than a 14-year-old newspaper boy to confirm it. So I put a Connie Francis, Where the Boys Are, on the turntable and rang my boss. And that was basically the first news story I broke, because he then in turn got in touch with the chief engineer, who was a ham radio operator, and he then piped through Voice of America, and we broke all the rules in the PMG broadcasting manual and went live with a live coverage of the assassination of JFK. All because a little 14-year-old newspaper boy broke the story.
What did that do to your life?
Well, the adrenaline rush I got from being the first to break that news was like an addiction, and that addiction did indeed last a lifetime. Cyclone Tracy was a big bite that established me. I went up as a cadet, and under the instructions of a very volatile news editor who said, "This is your last chance. You let me down." And,
they always say that.
Yeah, but I believed him. That was the difference. So I went up there and did things I wouldn't normally have done and said things I wouldn't have normally said, and we got the first story out of Darwin. So
how did you get down?
We had a Learjet.
Tracy in
74. Christmas 74.
Christmas 74, yeah.
And, this is long before mobile phones. And no connection. All phone lines, of course, were down, conventional phone lines. So we were filing stories for 10 days on film. And we never lost a single story. We just handed the stories to airline pilots who were evacuating Darwin, and they delivered them to Channel 7 or to a courier at the airport.
It was a classic disaster zone, no water, so how did you survive? How did you get through?
Well, water soon started to flow. We had an apartment on one of the least damaged apartments in the Travelodge Hotel, so we stayed there. Salvation Army provided us with meals.
Was the bar open?
It did eventually open. There were a lot of journalists up there. The bar had to open, but not for another 4 or 5 days.
Well, you've seen a lot of tragedy. Does that hit? Well, that's close to home. Friends, is that the worst?
Yeah. Timor. No, the hardest would have been the crash of the helicopter in the early 80s when we lost another 4 very close colleagues, and that was sudden. I mean, with Timor, it dragged on for a few days, but when you lose 4 people in one hit, that is dramatic. And that was by far the hardest, the hardest news bulletin I ever read, and perhaps one of the most difficult chapters I've had to write about. But there are a few difficult chapters in the book.
What other ones? What else is difficult to go back to?
Well, Timor was difficult. I suppose the takeovers, the tycoons' interference in television, they're difficult periods.
Getting sacked?
Getting sacked? Look, I think that someone once said you're not worth a pinch of salt in television until you've been sacked or sued. Well, I was sued. I had an $8 million defamation case that lasted a week in the Supreme Court.
Who sued you?
That's another. The backstory of that is quite incredible, and that's in the book too.
One of the things that stands out to me in the book is the decency with which you view the world and the world of television, because there's some absolute bastards in television.
Well, there have been, but honestly, in all the time I've been in television, I can count the bastards on one hand.
And they are?
Read the book. No, the book is not a kiss and tell, and it's not a case of biting the hand that's fed me.
No, certainly not.
And it's most of the books I've read about media have always been written by Sydney-based journalists, Sydney-based authors, about Sydney-based networks and about the rise and fall of Sydney-based tycoons. This is a Melbourne story to balance the books.